Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. What's going on, David? Anything new?
Hey, Jesse. I don't know. It's been an exciting week at BDEX, but Microsoft's not always my favorite company, but they made a pretty exciting announcement this week about quantum computing. So that'll be really interesting to see how that evolves over the next couple of years.
Oh, it'll be interesting to get someone on from Microsoft to talk about that.
Yeah, it's certainly going to have a big impact on AI and the computing. So it's going to be wild to see what happens over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, if anyone's listening and you know someone who knows someone, or you are someone who knows anything about that, that'd be really interesting to talk about on the show. But we also have a really interesting conversation today and an even more interesting guest. So today on Deconstructing Data, we're thrilled to welcome on Jess Lewis. She's the Chief Technology Officer at Crossmedia. Welcome to the show, Jess.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Jesse and David.
Yeah, absolutely, Jess. We're excited to have you on the show today and would love to have you kick it off for us. So why don't you give our listeners and viewers a little background about yourself and what led you to become CTO at Crossmedia and a little bit about Crossmedia as well.
Sure, love to. I've spent most of my career on the client side, which gave me a very deep insight into what keeps clients awake at night. When I pivoted to agency life, about 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, working for several of the holding companies, I brought that perspective with me, and I think it actually served me, pretty well. But now, as Crossmedia's first ever CTO, I have this incredible opportunity to shape what technology looks like at an independent agency that uses tech in a way that empowers their people. And what's really shaped my approach to technology and marketing is my background in cyberpsychology. And that's for those of you who don't know, that's the study of how humans behave and interact in digital spaces. And we're in those digital spaces all the time, right? Usually all day long if you're in tech or do anything around tech. And it's fascinating because people really behave differently online than they do in physical environments. And understanding these patterns and overlaps is crucial for modern marketing. For example, the way someone engages with content on their phone during the morning commute on the train is completely different from how they may interact with the same content while working on their laptop at work, or maybe on a device while they're watching TV. And this understanding of digital behavior patterns has become increasingly vital in martech as we try to create very meaningful connections in a increasingly complex digital landscape that we're all trying to navigate. What drew me to Crossmedia specifically was their 25-year commitment. So this is our 25th year. I get to say our now instead of their, to doing media the right way. We're headquartered in New York. We have offices across London, Germany, Toronto, and beyond. And what really sets us apart is how we've maintained our independence and our values while growing globally. And my role specifically focuses on empowering our incredibly bright minds. We have an incredible team with technology that advances our mission of transparency and ethical media practices. We are creating solutions that respect both our clients' needs, what's keeping them up at night, and their consumers' privacy. So for me, by combining cyberpsychology, my background in those principles, with more advanced technology, we're able to develop more human-centered approaches to marketing technology that go beyond just data points, which we've all got data, and we use those data points, of course, to understand the real people behind the screens. So that's been my mission.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I've been in this business for a while, in this industry for a while, and talking about online behaviors and tracking data and identity and all of that. But cyberpsychology is kind of like a term that I hadn't used before. So I'd love for you to dig deeper into that And it happens to be our first topic, talking about cyber psychology and media planning. So I'd love to have you share a little bit more about that, teach us a little bit more about it, and dig a little deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Cyber psychology is an emerging field, so I'm not surprised that you hadn't heard the term being used very often. I hadn't either, believe it or not. My scholastic background, my academic background, initially was not in cyber psychology. I won't dive down that wormhole, but when I realized that in product and in technology, that's what I was actually doing, right? We're talking about digital behavior. There's this fascinating paradox that I observed throughout my career. And as I understood that it was really called, there was a name for it, right? Cyber psychology. Everyone's chasing hyper personalization. But what we're seeking is that what we're seeing, I should say, is that too much personalization actually creates a kind of digital tunnel vision. At Crossmedia, we're looking at how people naturally behave online. And here's what's interesting. They don't want to be put in increasingly narrow boxes. And as someone who specializes in cyber psychology and looks at the psychology of the way people interact with devices, interact with online, interact with algorithms, it's become something that helps us with media planning. It helps us with understanding the psyche of people. So take social media algorithms as an example. Users actively work to break out of their own recommendation bubbles, whether you're on TikTok or Reels. You may have done that yourself. I know I've done it, because they crave variety and discovery. They're literally fighting against the hyper-personalization that we've all been told is the gold standard. And this has completely transformed the way we think about reaching audiences. It's not about perfecting targeting. It's about being present in their experience in a way that's just disruptive enough to be interesting without being intrusive. And digital interactions are fascinating because they create these unique behavioral patterns that we never saw in traditional environments. And one of my favorite examples is how people develop different digital personalities across platforms. They may be a professional on LinkedIn, right? I have that persona myself, creative on Instagram, and then completely different on TikTok in a video or even in text on Threads, for example. We look at how these behavioral nuances, we look to those behavioral nuances to understand the full context of how people move through their digital spaces, depending on time of day and what's going on in their life and what device and what social media platform, or whether it's even email. And this is about understanding the psychology behind why someone chooses to engage in one moment and maybe scroll past another in one device or in one platform, whereas their behavior might be completely opposite in another.
So to some extent, you're saying that some of these algorithms that were built to help users find exactly what they want is not necessarily what they want.
That's right. That's
So
right.
Is that kind of
yeah.
what, and I wonder, and I'm not a TikTok user at all. I'm wondering if that's one of the successes that TikTok had, right? Because they came out with a so-called algorithm that was different from others. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, maybe you know the answer to that. I don't know. But is their algorithm different because it's more about discovery and less about sort of, pigeonholing somebody into a specific algorithm that is tied to their specific interests?
Yeah, I can say that they definitely started that For You page algorithm, right? The discovery part of it. And I think that is what, and I'm just going to say, I think that's what made them so successful, because I haven't seen their algorithm personally,
Sure.
but you see where it's being copied, right? And you see where it becomes very, very addictive to be on TikTok or to be on Reels. But interestingly enough, live on a farm in North Carolina. I've got some horses, and when I'm scrolling mindlessly at night, I end up seeing a lot of horse videos, which is great for me. But after a while, I'm like, oh, okay, that's all I'm seeing, and I really want to have a more expansive experience, right? So then, I go in and try to change that algorithm, and it's much easier to do on some of the ones that are more sophisticated. And it's interesting because we've reached this inflection point where having more data doesn't automatically mean better understanding. We need to look at data through a human lens instead of getting lost in endless data points. I think what happens with algorithms is they are asking the questions like, what does this tell us about how people are actually experiencing content? And we at Crossmedia, we want to ask the question, how can we make digital interactions feel more natural and less engineered, right? Because you can feel when the algorithm is starting to go into a particular direction. And sometimes the most effective approach isn't the most technically complex, like a very, very complex algorithm. It's really the one that best aligns with how people naturally behave online. And I think that's actually the downside of having that hyper personalization happen through those algorithms.
So how do we apply this to media planning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if I give you an example, maybe that might illustrate it a little bit more, as far as like campaign timing, right? So campaign timing, you can look at a bunch of data points and see that you might be in the right place at the right time, the right message. But what it doesn't always consider, and not often because it's data points that we don't know, is what mindset the consumer may be in, depending on so many different factors. And this is where I actually totally geek out, because as a cyber psychology expert, I sort of think of myself as an FBI profiler. I do not work for the FBI. I do not do that, but it's as interesting as watching the FBI profilers on television. You really need to understand, like, there are only so many human interactions and only so many ways that humans very predictably behave. But if we take the human element out of understanding what those profiles are, and it's sort of like going back to personas, right? When you start personas, when you first start a marketing plan, or you get into your strategy, but it has to go deeper than that, right? You really have to get into the mind and the psyche of that person and what makes them tick and how long they're working, not just what they do and how much money they make, right? As far as the demographics, those data points, it's, gosh, if they've been working at a job that feels very senior, they're probably working more than 40 hours and they want mindless scrolling at night. They aren't necessarily shopping at 6 o'clock. They might be making dinner. And so it's really getting deeper and deeper. And so I think it helps us. It does help us, and we've been able to show that it helps us with media planning to create another level of that human understanding.
That's wild.
Yeah, so interesting. I love how you explain it too. You make it so simple for any marketer to kind of understand it, and taking it back to the basics with persona. I also love that earlier you mentioned threads, because you don't often hear people talking about threads, but I do see it every once in a while coming up on like different marketing reports of like, oh, we can't ignore threads anymore. And there's really no way to automate it or like third-party tools to help you with it just yet.
Not yet, but they are going to be launching advertising, and as soon as they do, you'll see those tools. Then some of them are already being created, as we speak. I've heard some rumblings, and I'm really interested to see how that's going to turn out. Yeah.
So good. And by the way, if anyone's watching, I know I see 8 of you on LinkedIn. Let us know, where are you tuning in from? Do you have any questions, comments? This conversation is just as much for you. So keep us honest here. And I was just going to transition us into the second topic, but was there anything else on the intersection of cyber psychology and media planning that either of you wanted to go over? If not
unless you want to spend another 3 hours with me. I can go real deep.
Go really deep.
Really deep.
Yeah, we could. Like, Ooh, what data do you pull? Ethical AI and audience segmentation and identity resolution as our second topic. Could you kick us
Yeah.
off on your thoughts with this?
Sure. And if you don't mind, I'll do it from, you know, more of a cross-media point of view and our approach. Um, our approach to AI comes from understanding both technology and human behavior. Not a surprise, because I've already talked a bunch about human behavior. And this helps us create solutions that serve real needs while respecting privacy and ethical considerations. Um, we really feel that technology should enhance human decision making and not replace it. So at Crossmedia, and as part of my remit as the new CTO and as the first one, we're building systems that augment our team's expertise while maintaining very clear ethical boundaries. And we want to think about it in new ways. So here's something that might surprise you. Our obsession with one-to-one marketing might be working against us. I mentioned that a little bit at the beginning. Traditional marketing funnels are inherently leaky, right? That's the thing that all marketers are trying to solve. And when we try to narrow down to perfect individualization, we often end up with less effective campaigns, not more. And what we're doing is flipping the script. So instead of chasing ever narrow segments, we're looking at behavioral patterns more holistically. How do people move through digital spaces? How do they discover new things? What is their curiosity drive? What are they curious about? And this approach lets us use AI and data in a way that respects both privacy and human nature, because sometimes the most personalized experience is not actually the best experience. So yeah, I think that's good.
Such a great point too, that the most personalized experience is not the best experience because you can really look like a creep
Yeah.
sometimes.
You can. And what do we want, right? We want something that's personalized, right? We don't want to be marketed to in a way that makes us feel like the brand doesn't know us. But at the same time, there's a balance between, oh gosh, what does the brand know about us? I don't know if you were watching one of the reports the other day. I think it was on the national news, and they were talking about how our cars are really tracking every single thing that we do, right? If we have a particular brand of car, I won't get into what that is, but it was really shocking and enlightening as to how many times they can track how many times you brake, how many times you accelerate, how quickly you accelerated. So when you get into that type of data and it becomes creepy, then you're not part of the experience anymore. You have less brand affinity than if you just know them just right. And that's a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about, especially in the advertising marketing space, there's this, fine ethical line between personalization and, turning off the consumer by making them feel uncomfortable. And so you have to make sure you're on the right side of that line ethically.
Absolutely.
There's a lot you can do to target and make something personalized without necessarily making someone feel uncomfortable. And I think, to your point, that's super important to make sure that you're on the right side of that line. And because once you cross that line, you're sort of losing the effectiveness of your campaign. And
that's right.
your performance will suffer from that. So you need to sort of figure out where that line is and make sure you're on the right side of it.
Yeah, the ethical line, but also transparency, right? So the ethical line, not just for our consumers and our clients, but the transparency part of it. And I think our clients want the transparency in media. They want to know that that not only are we doing media the right way, we are doing media the right way on their behalf. Being an independent agency allows us to prioritize transparency in everything we build. Our technological solutions reflect this. We create systems where every decision can be traced and understood, and developing frameworks that make complex media buying processes very clear and accessible. And this transparency builds trust with our clients. It drives better results, but also in turn provides that trust with the client and then their end consumer as well.
Yeah, I was just sort of picturing what it would be like if we had to get into our cars and click a button that says, this vehicle will be tracking your braking, your speed, and everything else. And you're just like, okay, and then you can click and drive. But it's kind of like they don't have to do that for some reason, but we have to do it, online, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to hear too, David, more from you on ethical AI and audience segmentation. I mean, BDEX, we do a lot to help huge brands with like major audiences.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we
yeah.
use AI in two ways. One, we use it in our identity graph to detect fraud, and so we think that's really important. Our goal with our graph is always to make sure that it's as fraud free as possible. So we use it to detect IDs that are linked to bots, click farms, and all kinds of ad fraud. That essentially enables us to then build audiences that are targeted to real people, instead of building audiences that are targeting bots and click farms and things like that. Big challenge when you're talking about identity, when you're talking about all these platforms that are targeting ads, and you're talking about what percentage of my ads are going to to ad fraud. The importance of that is that that all starts at the identity graph. If you're not identifying the IDs that are linked to this, then you're essentially targeting them, right? And
Mhm.
inadvertently, you're building audiences saying, "Oh, I want to reach this person, this person, this person." Or you're creating your ICP, whatever it is. You're doing your media planning, but within that media planning, you're planning to target these bots and click farms because they've fooled you into thinking that they're a real person with these characteristics. So that's our goal in using AI, is to clean that up, improve performance overall from a campaign standpoint. And then the other is in building the audience itself, using AI to build audiences. So we have tools that build audiences off first-party data, essentially modeling that first-party data and then building audiences of people that look just like them in a privacy compliant way, so that you're not saying, okay, I'm going after this person and Joe, and here's his name and here's his address and all that stuff. You're building an audience that is based through some algorithms that is based on some historical data, and targeting this audience, but not back to what Jess said, you're not targeting them on a one-to-one basis. I'm not going after Jess Lewis specifically because I don't know who Jess Lewis is, right? This is supposed to be privacy compliant, right? I know that there are some IDs that may be associated to a person that have done these sort of things, which are similar to the audience that I want to reach, and that's essentially what the AI is doing, is helping build those audiences. The good thing about it is that we're able to do that in a privacy compliant manner. We're able to sort of reach that targeted audience. Maybe similarly to what you were saying earlier, Jess. It's like we're not getting too tight in our targeting. We're making it so that we have enough information to build that audience to target them, but we can learn from that. The AI can learn from that too. So we can take that campaign information, we can take the performance data and feed it back into the AI, into the model, retune the model and retune the audience, essentially too. And so that over
Yeah.
time enables us to get better and better.
Yeah, such a great point. Thank you for sharing that too. And if you're not doing that the right way, then you definitely need to be, because you're a spammer otherwise.
Right.
So yes, so many people need to hear that. I feel like the future of cross-channel attribution in a privacy-first world. So we're kind of starting, already to go down the topic of privacy, just with being ethical in AI. But Jess, could you kick us off with this topic in particular?
Sure, I would love to. The reality of digital behavior today is that it's wonderfully messy and nonlinear. People don't follow neat customer journeys anymore. If they really ever did, I question that. They're constantly switching contexts, devices, mindsets. And this has led us to really rethink attribution from the ground up. So instead of trying to force every interaction into a perfect funnel, we're building measurement frameworks that embrace this complexity. And it's about understanding the broader context of how people experience media and measuring what actually matters and not just what's easy to track or what we think we should track. And this shift has been absolutely incredible for our clients and for us because it gives them a more honest, actionable view of how their media is performing.
Yeah, so let's dig deeper into that because cross channel attribution is tough, right? It's
Very.
yeah, we've had these conversations on here. It's like everybody wants to take credit for the attribution, right? So you're running a campaign across 3, 4, 5 different platforms. For every single transaction, you could have 3 platforms that want to say that, oh, well, we saw that user, so we generated the transaction. We're getting credit for that transaction. So how do we sort of get through all of that and figure out, or do we figure out who's responsible for that transaction, or do we need to do it sort of in a group effort where we're saying, okay, well, we have a campaign running across all of these groups. We just want to see what the attribution is. We just want to see what our ROI is across all of these, and then do it on a campaign by campaign basis where you're mixing up the campaigns across all different media. I don't know what is the answer to that. Can we do it on a per platform basis, or do we have to sort of do it as a cohort?
Yes. And I think you answered the question, or you asked the question the right way, right? Which is, or do we? I think the or do we is really where we need to dig in more, because I think it's going to be both, and it depends. So I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's some. If my brain was glitching, I'm sure I could come up with some examples of where it's very important where you get the attribution per channel, right? And you give the credit to that channel. Very specific campaigns, I would say probably centered around the knowing of the customer on a particular platform, for example. If it's hyper targeted in that way, I would see where that would be less of a holistic effort. But on the flip side, if we talk about behaviors and not just cross-channel, but cross-device and cross-mindset of where these folks are on their timeline, in their timeline throughout their life, whether it's the day, the week, the evening, the month, the year, I think a holistic approach is more appropriate. And perhaps we need to rethink that, because the do we part of your question, I think, is really the most important part to dig in on.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many ways we could take that conversation, but I want to leave it to both of you to say, like, is there anything else either of you would add on cross-channel attribution in a privacy-first world? Because it really is difficult as a marketer. So what do you think is, if you are a marketer, say at a small to medium-sized business compared to an enterprise, what are the differences and what you should be starting to look at? Do you want to take that, Jess?
Yeah, I think I'll take it in 2 ways. One, from tech platforming. Does the technology that you're implementing for this cross-channel attribution enable your people, your clients, to make better decisions, or is it adding complexity or argument, between the different platforms that may want to take credit? And the other part of that is, I maybe this just sounds a little too mild, but I'll say it anyway. And that's just to be really curious and open-minded about how you're approaching your cross-channel attribution. Going back to what we were talking about a moment ago, it should be a both, and it depends. And if you're open to that and perhaps not so stringent on, we must have this attribution for this particular platform every single time, and instead say, what are some of the other ways that I can help my clients and that I can help my consumers, or help, if you're a company and you're targeting consumers, how can you actually get the best information that's going to deliver the right experience for your consumer? I think that's really the goal. And we can't move too far away from that.
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately you have to recognize the challenge and find a solution that meets your goals.
Absolutely.
Ultimately there's
Absolutely.
limitations to what you can do. So to your point, what is your goal? Who are you trying to satisfy? You're trying to satisfy your customer. You're trying to satisfy the end user. What is the outcome that you're looking for? Right. And then based on those goals, set your expectations on where attribution lies based on those goals.
Right.
Such a good, simple way to think about it. It's always just like, go back to your goal, right? What are we doing here?
That's right. What are you trying to solve for?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if there's not anything else to add on that topic, from either you or anyone in the audience, we'd love to hear from you too. Like, what are you doing with cross-channel attribution in a privacy-first world? But if not, then we'll move on to tech stack, because Jess, we would love to know, what are some of your favorite tools that you and your team are using in your tech stack?
Let's see. Well, okay. So to me, it's not about building more sophisticated tools or, I think you would naturally say my answer should be I like these 3 tools, right? And there is some sophistication in some of the tools that we use, but to me, I want to pick things that are going to make us smarter. And what we're seeing is that the most effective martech solutions are the ones that balance the technological capability with psychological understanding. So as an example, we're finding ways to use AI that enhance human decision making rather than trying to replace it. And this blend of technology and psychology really helps us create solutions that not only perform well, but actually make sense to the people using them. So as an independent agency, we have a unique position to choose the tools that are really best for us, right? Not because of large partnerships or anything like that. So we can use tools that enhance our buying, for example, enhance our planning. I have a few favorites, but I don't know that I should name drop at the moment. But we have some internal tools that we're building as well.
So this might be the first episode we have where someone didn't name tools. So I'm going to push a little bit, Jess. So like, about like Outlook or like Gmail or like your phone or text messaging, you don't have to like share the secret stack, but like, are there Slack, WhatsApp? Some of those are really popular.
Yeah.
Good to see you, AP.
Yeah.
Saw this comment come in. Andrew Paul, AP McIntosh. Hey peeps, good to see y'all. Good to see you.
Well, I'm definitely a Mac girl, and it's not that there's secret sauce necessarily, but it's for Crossmedia. There are the usual suspects when it comes to data, but one thing I really like to do is try new technologies. We're exploring ways to buy media better, more globally through a company called Bionic. And I think that, if you're interested in looking at a tool for media buying and planning, and that's something that's all encompassing, that's definitely one to take a look at. I love the way they innovate. And because we don't have to again be beholden to any particular platform, it allows us to do some of that exploration. The other thing that I think is important to bring up when it comes to tools is use the ones that are purpose built, but also balance between the times that you have to make some customizations, right? So it's kind of the age-old question of build versus buy. Where do you want to lean in and make more of those customizations, and where do you really want to innovate from the agency up, right?
Mm.
And that's where we're going to start to lean in a little bit more. I think you've had a guest on just recently about AI, kind of for AI's sake. And one thing that we are very, very particular about is not just having it just because it's a buzzword. I've been in AI ML for over 15 years, and that may surprise some people that it actually existed back then, right? And I might be aging myself by talking about that, but it's gotten more part of our lexicon, in the past year, 18 months. But that doesn't mean that we should all be adding AI to every single thing that we're doing, right? There's a balance, there's a human element that I think is very important to consider when you are building your tech stack. What's the right tool for the person that's using it day to day, right? So, we are a media advertising agency, and that means we are going to have planners and buyers and people who are working on strategy, and we need to pick tools that are going to be, and not going to make them the very best that they are. The brilliant minds that we have in our business, we want to make sure that we create and buy tools that are going to make them the best they possibly can for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So
Sure.
you mentioned Bionic. So I looked up Bionic. Do you know by chance, is it an orange logo?
It's kind of an orangey red
Orangey
logo.
red?
Yeah.
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 Not financial services, right?
No, it's a
Okay.
media planning and buying tool, taxonomy.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on taxonomy. My team has probably gotten sick of me by now talking about taxonomy.
Well, I tried to tag them, but I don't know if they're on LinkedIn. So if they're on LinkedIn, then they should definitely shout out. But I just wrote their name in the comments because normally I'll try to tag like any of the tools that the guests mentioned. So if
Sure.
anyone's
Yeah.
watching who knows them on LinkedIn, give them a tag so others can find them. I'd never heard of it before. I think that's the first time we've heard that tool mentioned on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just sent over to you, Jesse and David. I'm not sure who's going to see it on our little behind the scenes private chat, but I just sent over the URL for that. And we
Oh,
can say,
nice.
since we are name dropping, I'll say hi to Joe, who's amazing. He's
Is it
founder and lead engineer.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like Ebony Vaz is not coming up due to like a data privacy thing. Ebony, by the way, that's just why we're not seeing your name on the screen. It says LinkedIn user. LinkedIn has privacy settings that you have to give it access to set at third parties, and we have to use StreamYard to stream on LinkedIn. So I digress, but she shared the link as well.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to our viewers. If anyone still has any questions, comments, would love to hear from you in the chat. We've got people on LinkedIn still tuning in. So feel free to let us know. But in the meantime, Jess, if anyone who's listening now or later on podcast would like to reach out to you and do some business with you, could you just share a little bit about yourself, and then also how they could reach out to Crossmedia?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. With my name, Jess Lewis, and you can also find Crossmedia at xmedia.com and find out all about us, and we would love to work with you.
Thanks, Jess. This has been a great conversation. I'm so glad you joined us today. Really enjoyed it. It sounds like the dogs are getting hungry in the background, so just about time to go. So we'll let Jesse finish it up for us.
I will do that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great fun.
Yes, absolutely, Jess. Thank you so much for joining. But before we go, I want to let the audience members know. Let me put our QR code up on the screen. You can scan that QR code, or if you're listening on podcast, just head on over to beatex.com. But we want to invite you to get powered by Beatex, and you can build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences. And in marketing, that can sometimes be the hardest part, is finding product market fit. But we want to help you find your audience and help you, like, that truly resonates with your brand, and ensure that your marketing hits the mark every time. So let's bring you closer to your marketing goals. We're eager to guide you. Just use that QR code or go to beatx.com and click on Talk to an Expert, and our team would love to guide you. And if you or anyone you know would like to be on Deconstructing Data, we are now booking into August and September, maybe now, for the year. So get it in. Our Thursday slots are filling up. And after that, we do have some paid opportunities on Tuesday for any guests. But we would love to have you or anyone you know of on the show. Just email us at info@beatx.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make the show better for you. But thank you again so much, Jess, for joining us on the show. This was a really insightful conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.